here to help you lead in the everyday spaces and moments of life. The For Everyday Leaders podcast is all about resourcing and inspiring everyday leaders for impact. Now, your hosts of the For Everyday Leaders podcast, Brandon Faust and Alex Holt.
Welcome to the For Everyday Leaders podcast. Brandon Faust and Alex Holt here with you today. Alex, tell us what this podcast is all about.
Yeah, Brandon, this podcast is all about helping people lead in the everyday spaces and moments of life. And today we have with us Dustin Denton. Dustin is one of the founders and directors of both Seamless Roofing and Ascend Roofing, one of our incredible sponsors. He and his team have modeled serving and partnering with a couple of nonprofit organizations here in the city. Dustin's married to Hillary, and he's the dad to 3 sweet little girls.
And this episode of the For Everyday Leaders podcast is sponsored by Ascend
Yes,
Roofing.
it is.
How fitting to
Yes,
have you
it
here
is.
today. And the team at Ascend are a perfect sponsor for this podcast as they embody everyday leadership in their business. They're locally owned and operated, and Ascend Roofing has more than a decade of focused residential roofing experience. They service the greater Indianapolis area. I've personally had Ascend Roofing come to my house, and they went above and beyond my expectations. So whether it's to respond to severe weather or time for a new roof, visit their website at ascendroofingllc.com. That's ascendroofingllc.com. Dustin, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thanks, man. It's pretty neat.
We met connected. It's been 10 whole years now, almost to the
Really
day.
10.
Almost to the day.
Wow.
Because we moved to Indiana in June of 2012, and it is on time of recording August 2022. So yeah, probably right around there. And met at church, got into the same small group together. A friend was like, I think you'll like this guy. He likes sports, seems like a good person. His wife's really cool. And, obviously we've been friends now, and our families have been close for about 10 years now, which is really cool. It's been fun over those 10 years. You've had some career shifts. You've had some significant changes in your life.
Just a couple.
But it's been fun to watch you learn, grow, and grow into leading really well. And, I can remember times where we'd have conversations at like Flapjacks about things I was struggling with in leadership, and then things that you were going through. And now kind of for both of us in the last, you've been probably one of the biggest champions and advocates of me doing the work that we're doing in our business and our nonprofit and all that stuff. So it's kind of full circle fun to bring it all together today. And my guess, though, is that you probably knew Alex before I did, or maybe had met Alex before I did.
I did.
Yeah.
Went to the same church growing up, and really just knew your older brother.
Yep.
Back then, but still remember really the first time that I was like, "Wow, that's Alex Holt."
Oh no! Here we go. Here we go.
It was a spoken word.
It's like an iconic moment.
I've never lost it. It was so powerful. Middle of service, something that Connection Point didn't really do very often. I don't think they'd ever done it actually.
No, it was a first for sure.
Lights go out, and Alex starts this powerful spoken word in the middle of sermon, and it's just like, oh my goodness, couldn't believe that was happening. Then also asked, who's that guy?
Everyone's like, that's Alex. He's been here
awesome.
forever.
Yeah.
He's usually running lights or cables or something like that as a kid.
There were also a lot of people who asked me after that moment, which has been scrubbed from the internet, just to be very clear. You cannot find it.
It's unfortunate.
They have asked me, hey, did you go out back behind the church and smoke a pack of cigarettes before you did that? Or how did that whole situation happen?
You're like, nope, that's just my voice.
Just was born this way.
Just born that
Just
way.
my Lady Gaga moment. I was born this way.
And, but yeah, Alex, if you didn't know, spoken word artists can throw it down. So, but yeah. And, one of Dustin's companies, Seamless Roofing, has been a client of our company, Switchback, and it's just been fun. It's just been fun to be on this entrepreneurial journey kind of together, to watch you grow, to watch you expand, make an impact in the lives of so many people. So I think people are going to benefit from just your journey, your story. I think it's going to encourage and inspire somebody. But tell us, Dustin, kind of where did you grow up? What was life like for little Dusty Denton growing up?
Dusty Denton. Now you're hitting the way back. Only people from the past still call me that, but I get it every once in a while. We moved back to the town that I grew up in November. So I grew up in Brownsburg, Indiana, northwest side. I still go to the same church that started going to when I was in 3rd and 4th grade. Did all the normal stuff. Academics were important, but we did football, basketball, baseball. Had a younger brother, played out back. Really strong family life. I think, growing up, everything was focused in the right direction. Knew I was going to go to, school, wanted to play ball, did. And then about my junior year, the first challenge of real life happened. Watched my parents get divorced. A lot of people, I think, imagine that that's easier when you're older, right? You're emotionally mature, everything else. At 21, I don't think I was quite emotionally mature enough to handle that. But it's the first time in my life that something happened that I didn't feel like I had any control over, influence over. So, really the first time that I leaned into my faith and kind of threw my hands up and said, if I can't do this, then maybe he can do something with it. And beginning of the walk.
Talk to us about, you go from, and for those that don't know, old Dustin here was quite the athlete. Played a little quarterback, shared some time at times at quarterback too. Played some basketball, all the things, right? And then going on to play college football and stuff. What did you end up studying? Kind of what was that focus on that career pathway? Kind of how did that, wrap up in college, then move into that first job, if you will?
Yeah, so I think I always knew I was going to be in some sort of business. I didn't have a medical tilt. I watched both my parents in sales, own their own companies. Uncle owns his own company. Entrepreneurial bent was kind of always there. But also like studying medical stuff and all of that. My wife did it. More power to her. I didn't want to study that hard. So business felt like an easy way.
Yeah.
Right. And then, I ended up bouncing around a couple majors, found finance, which I always talk about. I was an accounting major for about 3 weeks. And Brandon's laughing because he knows that there are just way too many rules in accounting for me to actually exist and thrive in.
For sure.
So I chose finance, and I justify that as, I say finance is really justify your answer math. Right.
I like
if
that.
If you can argue your way into 2 + 2 is 5. Right. It's all about the supporting documentation. So, no, I thought that was fun. Got into wealth management, asset management type stuff with Northwestern straight out of school. Had a great mentor that I actually get to work with today.
Yeah.
So cool. That's really cool. Taught me a ton. Really poured into me. Really neat guy named Travis. That didn't quite work out long term, so I went to work for trash company, Uncle's Trash Company. I got fired from that gig. So 2 years into that, 2 years into marriage, looking for a new job, went back into the finance world.
Let me pause right there because the story gets better. But like talk about the, because there are things within people's control. Maybe they made some decisions, but maybe things outside of their control in the last couple of years. That's just the workplace. It's just been such a weird thing, right? Yeah. Like there's so many jobs available, but then there's some that aren't, and certain people are getting cut. What was just like that journey like for you, being like, hey, I just got fired from a company, and kind of how do you sort through that identity wise, all that kind of stuff? Because I'm sure there's maybe some people listening who's experienced that recently or going through it right now, and it's a real thing,
Yeah. I think the thing that I should have learned from the first time is maybe a little bit more self-evaluation. What did I bring to the table? Just trying to own it a little bit more. It was easy to look at, the stuff that I saw, right? And I was developing and, my vantage point exclusively, and say, well, I was producing, I was doing this, I was doing that. The farther I get away from it, I realized just how hard I was to work with. And it was just misplaced ambition. Yeah. Wasn't coachable. there's a lot in there. So I'd also say like getting fired, not the worst thing in the world that can happen to you.
Yep.
It did take me, multiple attempts at that to figure that out. We'll get into the second one, but I wish I would have taken a little bit more time to really explore what I brought into that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's such a critical lesson. So I was fired from a job as well. And at the time, you just very much are like, I was producing, I was performing, like I was changing how this company was working. And very similarly, like the further I've gotten away from that, then the more perspective I've gotten in my life, the more I've been like, man, I kind of was actually like lazy, and I kind of was like just skating by in that company because I had raw talent that I thought that was enough. And I think that's such a thing with a young generation right now who is trying to figure out their place in the working world.
Yeah.
Is that sometimes like it's great to have raw talent, but you also have to like show up and want to actually contribute to the mission of the organization, and not that's important to like show off how good you are.
Yeah.
And I think that self-evaluation component, if we can learn how to do that, if you were to get fired, like that's such an incredible learning.
And that team sports kind of thing too. Like you can tell very quickly on teams that I've been on, people who are all about themselves, their numbers, their points, their, how much they had the ball or whatever it was, at least in the sports I played. And you could pick it up very quickly. And it's like, yeah, there definitely are people in a basketball game that can score 30 points a game and should, right? And they're playing within the system and all that kind of stuff. And then there are people who take 30 shots in a game that have no business doing it.
Right.
They're disrupting everything. And so I think there is that, talent is one thing, but what does it mean to be coachable? What does it mean to be humble? What does it mean to carry that day in and day out? And then as you make whatever that ascent in your career is or looks like, how do you continue to, embody that?
Yeah.
Kind of give us, all right, so that happened, and working through that, and then kind of what was like the career, Candyland twist and turn of the kind of the next move, the next kind of industry, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So again, common fiber, I think of this whole path is going to be how the Lord, shows up. He's always faithful. Young, newly married, Hillary's in school, get fired from a job that I was not expecting. Obviously don't just have masses of savings to fall back on. So inside of 2 weeks, I found another role, got back into finance with a guy that really also ended up pouring into me, gave me a lot of opportunities, taught me a ton. And, that connection and how that all happened so quickly, I don't want to take away now that I'm, a decade removed from the first time that happened. In the moment, it's visceral, right? You're living it. So if that's where you're at right now, as you were, saying for those that are listening, be encouraged. But it's still all right to feel it. You're not supposed to be okay 5 minutes afterwards. But it took me a while to get some confidence back, to believe in that talent again. It took Scott telling me and encouraging me, what my identity was, what the value that I brought, all of that. So that was really helpful. So ended up getting back into, like I said, wealth management, asset management, a little bit of private equity, learned a ton, was exposed to so much. For the next 5 years in that world, I would always play a game. We'd be in a room with a bunch of business leaders, business owners, Scott and his colleagues or peers, and I'd look around the room and I'd, in my head, ask the question, who doesn't belong? And there I am, just slowly raising my hand.
I think we've all been in rooms like that before.
Well, that was the neat thing about Scott, though, because he just always put me in that room.
Yeah.
He gave me that opportunity to be exposed, and I think that was one of the things that I learned from the first time. Like, I did have so much to learn, so I had an opportunity to capture that. I had that awareness. Yeah. So there are a ton of things that come out of the failure or the road that you're not planning to take. So just got to sit and watch these business owners solve problems, strategize, pick each other's brains. If you're in this situation, what would you do? And then 2 or 3 other people would pour in, or discuss that kind of stuff. It was just really neat time, very formative.
Yeah. So I know how the story goes there. End up getting let go of that, out of that position.
Let go is the kind version.
Yeah. And
I was fired for the second time.
yes, you were fired for the second time. And I know that you learned a lot from that experience. There's a lot of good that you was invested in, you were exposed to, and all that kind of stuff. And then kind of I remember we got together right after that happened and sat down, talked through it, worked through some of the emotionality of it and all that stuff. So then, how did you end up starting a company, owning a company, and now companies, and get on that path after those things? Because last I checked, usually when people, maybe get let go from a couple spots, the confidence does go down, right?
Yeah, it's hard
and then go into an industry that you didn't have any experience with either, So
I never was on a roof, right?
Yeah, take us through that journey.
Yeah, so just that happened. Let go from the finance gig. Let's see, it was February 12th of 17, and again, just put back in that spot. Do I want to go back through this? Do I have to change desperately, or am I built a certain way? Do I have certain things to offer that maybe belong in the driver's seat versus passenger seat? And there is a reason why they don't put steering wheel on both sides of the car, right? It's very difficult for two people to drive.
Unless like a driver's ed car where they have like the
just
brake.
they just put a brake.
brake
The emergency brake. Yeah.
There's still no steering wheel.
Yeah, there's no steering wheel, but there is a brake.
No, it was in a lot of conversations with my wife. She was incredible through the whole thing. She was the one that offered to go back to work, suggested we should sell the house, move in with my mom. She took all the barriers away.
Yeah.
And then just the timing and the resources and the relationships that I think the Lord puts in your path. Guy named Sean had a roofing company that he was doing on the side with one of his friends growing up. My two partners and I, we'd started a conversation about 6 months prior about doing something way down the road. We said when we're 40, which was 10 years in the future at that time, we should do something on the side, but let's just talk about what those things might be. Let's continue to have conversations, plan some of the stuff out. So ended up reaching out to Sean, talk about some private equity stuff, and he said that there might be a roofing company for sale. And I'd seen this company 3 years prior and was really intrigued by it. Didn't know roofing was its own industry, by the way.
Oh, impressive.
I thought it was just part of construction, and you just forget that the roof's there. That still happens, right?
Yes.
That's we're there to remind our clients that the roof's there and needs some attention.
Yes.
But the whole thing kind of came together. I went and talked with Eric and Aaron. Asked them about speeding up our timeline by roughly 9.5 years.
Just a casual conversation.
I get that.
Yeah. Why don't we do this roofing company? And to your point, they asked the same question that everybody asks us still today. Like, how'd you get into roofing? I don't have a great answer. I didn't grow up wanting to be a roofer. It was an opportunity to go run our own company. And we thought that we could bring maybe some of the things that we learned from our previous, employment, high service, high quality, high communication, high integrity. Unfortunately, we're in an industry that doesn't exactly lead with that, and that's I think a perception of the marketplace. So we try to just make that a very low bar that's easy to cross. They're pillars of who we are as a company, and then we try to also do that with the people that we bring onto our team. So,
well, I think what I love about the story of you guys starting that, and I actually just recently had lunch with a mentor of mine and was talking a very similar thing of like, hey, I'm thinking about 10 years down the road. Like, I'm just kind of looking ahead, have this dream of like starting my own thing. What does that look like? He's He's a business guy, has his own company, has for the last 15 or 20 years. And so just wanted to pick his brain. And we were sitting there over lunch and he looked at me and he's like, why don't you just do it tomorrow? And I was like, I don't know. And he said the same challenges that are going to exist tomorrow are going to exist in 10 years.
Yeah.
You're never going to feel like you're ready. You're never going to feel like you have the finances figured out. You're never going to feel like you have the perfect business plan.
You're correct in all those things, by the way.
Thank you for validating that.
Yeah.
And he's like, so why don't you just like go do it? Like just go start it. And I think that was such really good advice. And in case my boss is listening, like I'm not doing that today. But it was just such an encouragement and to hear that in your guys' story of like, there's something really powerful about acknowledging that the barriers are always going to be there. There's always going to be challenges when you start something new.
Yep.
And they may look a little different in 10 years, but they're always going to be there. So like just start and start really well and be prepared to fail and get yourself picked back up again and then keep going until you build something that turns into something as incredibly successful as what Seamless Roofing and Ascend have become.
And sometimes when you just plan and talk about it, think about it, and then start making some decisions, stuff happens. Like in 2017, 2018, I started Brandon Faust Coaching LLC on the side, and I was like, I'm a full-time pastor. I'm not going to, but there was this desire, hey, 20 years down the road, let's do this thing. There's some things that you and I had talked about, let's do this thing. And then boom, when the time is right, the shell's there, the idea's there, the conviction's there.
Yep.
And there's always going to be that thing that you're longing for. You want more money to run this thing. Okay. And then you realize, oh, now we have a people issue and we need the right people. And so you're like, we got the money, but now we need the right people, or we need the right process, or we need the right clients, or like there's always this whack-a-mole game that's happening. But I think for some people who are built with that entrepreneurial spirit, whether it's your full-time thing, part-time thing, whether it's a grassroots initiative, whether it's a ministry, man, sometimes that conviction, that stone that's been put in your shoe, pay attention to it. Why is it there? How did it get there? What does it mean? And what could that lead to steward it well? And I think that is so much in, your story with you and Aaron and Eric and launching this thing out. So what's been kind of like a formative moment on the entrepreneurial journey though? Like what was a moment or a season that kind of shaped your life, your leadership, as you've been on this the last few years?
We've been doing this for 5 years, man. So asking for one moment's tough. No, the beauty of what we get to do at Seamless, I really believe it started with, the three of us. We grew up playing ball together, grew up in the same church, went to school together, families know each other. Like Eric and I have been talking about doing something together since we were 15. Yeah. What I didn't realize is Aaron is my younger brother's best friend. They're 2 years behind us at school. And they were talking about doing something together, when they were in high school. Yeah. And the joke that I make with my brother is, you joined the Air Force, I stole your business partner. It's kind of like even. But we're doing a lot of the things that people tell you can't do. Don't work with your friends. Don't work with your families. Don't go out and start your own company when you don't know anything about what you're doing. And the reality is, like, if you've got great relationships and you care about those relationships and you pour into them, then you can work through all that. Maybe the best thing that we bring to the table is we figure things out, right? Yeah. Roofing is not a science. There's a whole lot more art and opinion to it than I ever believed, or really even today still want to believe that there is. Right? And I just want a straight answer sometimes. Right. But I think that is also what makes it very interesting and allows us to thrive in this space, because we sit down, we collaborate on everything. Yeah. So a moment I thought about immediately when you said this, we just finished just an incredible job. First time that we'd done essentially what our company's named after, a seamless roof on a big metal building. And it was in my head immediately the blueprint for what we should do exclusively moving forward. Yeah. So we sat down in the room with Eric, and I'm a whiteboard guy. Like, give me the marker. I'm going to fill it up. We're going to take a picture, erase it. We're going to fill it up again. We're just going to go for the next 3 hours, and I'm cranking on the whiteboard. Eric's not giving me much. I keep asking him questions, and finally he slams his fist down on the table, and I'm just like, what do you think? He's like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. it was like put the cap on the marker, sit down. Let's just pause for a second type of moment. I was like, if you don't want to do this, then I'm kind of screwed. So we talked for about 6 hours, realized that Eric had feelings, and just realized how much we were missing in our communication because we weren't being honest with each other. Right? We were kind of assuming a lot of different things about intentions or what we wanted, how quickly we wanted to go, how much stress we could all handle. We ignored, all of those indicators as you go. We needed to be huge immediately, which also that is just self-imposed. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that was one of those moments that I think brought a ton of clarity and helped put some guardrails around just specifically Eric and I talking, moving forward, built a lot of trust, being able to work through that in that moment. So,
and I think that's, whether it's in that executive type team or whether it's in our jobs every day, whether it's in a ministry we're part of or in our homes, right? Like just that, hey, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm thinking.
Yep.
We're in this together. It seems like maybe our goals are drifting based on some things that are happening, and then just getting right to it and saying, hey, here's what I was thinking. Here's what I was assuming.
Yep.
Closing that gap. Right. Yeah. And then what always ends up happening is, you end up closer. You end up with more trust.
Yes.
You think about like the circle of trust, like from, Meet the Parents or whatever. And it's like, you are outside the circle of trust. And then it's like, oh man, we're in the circle of trust together. Let's go. So I think that is such a huge thing of like trust with your team, honesty, vulnerability, communication, and those whiteboard kind of slam the pen down. Like, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
Yes.
Kind of moments.
I think that
because there are dreamers that can dream so far into the future and be so high conceiving that it's like, hey, I've got to take everything that's in your brain and operationalize it, and I'm just going to tell you I'm going to break if I do that, right? Because knowing Eric, he wants to make it happen, right? So it's like, we can do this. We could totally do this. Are we okay with this?
Yeah.
Right? Are we okay that we don't have to be this, company with 500 employees or something like that someday, and just be content being like awesome right here in this spot and continue to make a difference and do it our way.
It's also what makes us really good together. Yeah. Eric does spend, his time, his mind is in the detail and in the day to day, and how are we going to solve this immediate problem? And man, I couldn't be further out in front of so when I get pulled back into that, like that's where
hard.
I slam my fists on the table because those meetings they're tough for me, man. So understanding and appreciating the talents, the perspective that other people bring is huge, and learning that with him in that moment then allowed me to have more grace and just a better vantage point to appreciate what other people were bringing that were already on our team as well.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that is missing in a lot of companies, organizations, churches that I've had the opportunity to talk to, is missing at that leadership, that executive level, is this idea of psychological safety in the room. Like the fact that we can get together and I know that you care about the mission as much as I do. And because you care about the mission as much as I do, we're going to ask each other the hard questions. And we're going to ask, is this really the right thing? Like, are you giving me the last 10%? Are you giving everything that you've got? Because what I don't want to do is walk out of this room and us go to pursue something. And at the end of it, like you're burnt out, you're cooked, you're frustrated by it. And I think that the more we can work to create that psychological safety in those spaces, the more authentic we can be and the better we can run our companies and organizations from a place of trust and a place of actually caring about each other as much as we care about the mission and the profit that we make at the end of the day.
I think that's huge. We spend a lot of time, across the board with our team. It's not just, driven by me, not even really. It's something I model after how Eric does it. But we may sit and talk with, individual team members, have a one-on-one conversation, last an hour, not talk a minute about roofing. Right. Yeah. Or seamless or any kind of business. Compartmentalizing life and, no matter what you had, happen in your home life last night or this morning, you got to show up and be 100% correct at work. Just isn't a reality. And understanding that there are outside influences that people do bring to work. Now we got to work through that kind of stuff, but it's important to give each other grace. Talk about that a ton. Understand, pour into one another, serve as, at the top of our mission. It is our whole mission, serve our clients. But then we learned we also have to add the and each other part. We put that mission of serving our clients on the board, and we went out and we did that, and then we realized we were putting a lot of people on an island by not realizing we got to serve each other in this whole thing.
Yeah. That's good. So with that in mind, Dustin, talk about how you guys have leveraged your company and used your business for making an impact. That's something I have known about you to be true for a long time. And talk about how you've modeled that now as you guys have started this company.
Great question. I don't know that it was a contrived thought. I think that was who we already were. When you set out to do business with people that you also do life with, the three of us and our families have always been close. And we're not just talking about the six couples, like Aaron's parents, Holly's parents. Holly's Aaron's wife, by the way. I've known Greg and Nan since I was 8 years old. So we have a bunch of intertwined families and history and everything else. So if we were going to go to work, together, even if it was just going to be the three of us, we still had to have this intentionality because we knew each other outside of work, and we had already invested a ton of our life around that. And then we grew up in the same church. We grew up playing ball together. We knew what was important to all three of us individually, and we wanted to support each other. Yeah. So if there was something that was on Eric's heart, his parents spent a lot of time in Haiti doing medical mission type work down there. Just knowing, Greg and Ann, how great people they were, we wanted to use what we were building, right, to help them. Yeah. And it was easy to say yes because we were creating, we were, building this company. It wasn't about just making a bunch of money, but how could we, serve those that are around us and be a part of what they thought was important. And honestly, working with you at Switchback and Wayfinders helped us to, I think, put some language around that, even though I'm muddling my way through explaining this, but connect it to the rest of the team so that they understand that, while Seamless is still a company, right, there is a greater vision, mission.
Well, and I think that's what's cool is sometimes I think people just equate, and you guys have done this too, like financially, like supporting some things or whatever. Yeah. But then you guys have also shown up and volunteered at places. And I know that you don't like to toot your horn about that kind of stuff. I know you well enough, but it's like you guys have spent a lot of time with, kids at Elevate Indianapolis and events there, and had them shadow some things, and kids from, schools on the Near East Side come in and learning something about an industry that they didn't know, and building relationships with people that they wouldn't have known, and thinking through all that stuff. You've got some people in your company who they and their kids have a nonprofit that they're passionate about, and you guys have partnered with that in different ways and stuff like that. And it's just I think sometimes we think about an impact. It's like, well, I don't have, $20,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 to be just writing checks left and right. But it's like, what does it look like with your time? And then when you do that, the opportunity, seeing some of your team at some of these events, it invites them into it, right? To say, what's it mean to be generous with this stuff?
I think that was one of the neater things to see is, we opened the door with Pathways to Purpose at Elevate and what they're doing in the schools and around the students 24/7. It's awesome. Yeah, right? It's
incredible.
So getting to bring the students in and watching the team get excited about that. Watching Leslie organize all of this and tell the girls in that class that are coming in, even in a roofing company, here are all the rules or roles that are out there, and we had so many people on the team, pour into the students to tell people about what their roles were, teach different elements. That was awesome. The buy-in across the board. There's a lot of culture that gets thrown around as a buzzword today, and millennials, you gotta work for that company that's got the right culture and the work-life balance and everything else. And those things are tough for me. from just a cliched and overused word. Trying to find out what is meaningful, what gives people fulfillment, what attaches purpose.
Yeah.
We all got to work. I mean, that's the reality. Like,
Yes.
we wake up every morning, got to go to work. Teaching my girls that, today's a work day, and that's why Saturdays are so much fun when they wake up, because they ask me, "You going to work, Daddy?" I'm like, "No, today's our day."
Yep.
But how do we connect that work to purpose and fulfillment? And it takes paying attention, takes asking questions, takes building that trust.
Yep.
With people individually, so that they will open up and share some of those things, and then being interested in what they're interested in.
Yeah.
If we can go back them, as they go out and serve people in, their quote unquote mission field, I think we're building, incredible people up. We're backing them up. I think it's a more fulfilling way to go to work every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just that idea of that building trust. Like, I think that's such a critical component. And that's something that, dude, just to honor you, Dustin, that I've seen you do since I've known you, is you just you really pour and invest into people. You're one of the most generous people that I know. And that overflows out of who you are as a person. And that overflows into the company that you get to be a part of. And that's been super cool for me to watch and learn from. So thank you for doing that.
That's awesome. When you have people that model it and then it's in the book, right? I mean, we're kind of called to be that way. And still growing, trying to be more of it. So
absolutely. So as we wrap up our conversation, what is a book? What is a podcast? What is a resource that you've just really been listening to a ton of lately that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah. So this is actually listening to the previous podcast. This is the question that I got stuck around. I was like, what book? I need something really sophisticated. I will say
there are a lot of people who've given me feedback. They're like, "Hey, I went and read that book. Hey, I listened to that thing." And they're like, "It was really good." So people,
no pressure.
This is kind of a big moment, but people are kind of depending on you for something good here.
All your previous guests, they had something really, high-minded to say in that area.
I mean, we're reading now in a group, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, because I think I've just heard it in my brain 4 times on this podcast.
Good for you guys.
Yeah.
He says we. I haven't gotten the book yet. I got a couple of weeks.
Doug. You got a couple of weeks.
We did just finish Becoming Us, which was an Enneagram thing. I thought that was interesting.
Yep.
No, I'm in the Word every day, and that's been transformative for me. I think there are a ton of leadership books. There are a ton of business books. There's a ton of stuff that's out there. But for me, going right to the source, and not looking for something that's been repackaged for the 21st century, we haven't had an improvement on morality or ethics since Jesus walked the earth. So I want to go, direct to the source and see, where am I in alignment with who He is, who He expects me to be, and that's what I'd say on the book podcast. Anything history, Dan Carlin, love that stuff.
Yeah. There's what's interesting too in all this. Dustin mentioned this Becoming Us podcast. Or Becoming Us book that we read. And I'll be honest, I was like, I don't know if Dustin's going to be really an Enneagram guy. There were a couple other guys.
We actually had this conversation.
I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. But man, it was such a, it's just such a good launching point, reference points. Even, it was more designed for us to talk through as couples and good conversations there. But I think as a group of friends, it helped us to kind of be like, oh yeah, affirm some things, or oh yeah, that makes sense, and to use it in a way that's not like a weapon or a shield.
That was one of the most powerful lines in the book.
I was like, man, that is so good, but also to affirm, because I think even in your story, there could have been so many, and there definitely were some things you need to work on and still need to work on.
Amen.
And I've had a front row seat to that too. But at the same time, seeing all these things that could have been messaged just as deficits in your life that are actually just needed to be repurposed as strength, just need to be repurposed as
so good.
This is part of who you are, kind of some of the latent things that God put into you or experience that you've had that you're ready to run with. And I think as with kids, with parenting, with friendships, with teammates, in our organizations, whatever, seeing that, man, there's some things that can be so visible as man, oh, here we go again. well, maybe that's just, the you of 7 years ago, right? Where it's like, hey, this just needs to be refined. So what does it mean to show grace, tell truth, invite them to a better way? But I think those things around self-reflection on the Enneagram, all that kind of stuff, help us see, hey, here's maybe how I'm wired up a little bit more. I just need to be an on-ramp. I just need to be deployed. I just need to be encouraged to go and to run and do these things.
I'd say two things on that book in particular. One, I thought it was great for our friendships, but for just me being able to communicate with my wife, seeing some of the things that pop up, and I can understand how she's communicating with me better.
Yep.
And 12 years in, we'll celebrate 12 years on Sunday.
That's awesome.
Still learning my wife. It's still one of my greatest pursuits. I love it. She's incredible. And finding new ways that I can communicate with her or connect with her was huge. The second thing, found out that I'm an 8. So very quickly looked up which type generally doesn't believe in Enneagram. Yep. And it's an 8.
Yep. Yep.
So there you go.
That's amazing. I love it.
That's good.
I love it.
It's good. Well, Dustin, how can people find you, connect with you, get involved with some of the things you're up to?
Oh, I didn't get this deep into those things. Through you, maybe. Just raise your hand. Brandon does a great job of connecting me to different people that are looking for things. If it's roofing related, if you own a home, multifamily, things like that, anything that's shingle, Ascend does a great job. Jose's been incredible. Scott over there is learning very quickly, and I think they're going to do a ton of great stuff. Flat roof, commercial stuff, seamless roofing. We've got an incredible team. Our people do go out and serve every day, and I find that my mission is just to give them more opportunities to show people how good they are.
That's good.
So
That's awesome.
Dustin's not really a social media guy. He is on LinkedIn, so you can connect there. But we just want to say thanks, man.
Well, thank you, man.
For coming on the show today. We want to say thank you to all of you for tuning in today of the 4 Everyday Leaders podcast by Wayfinders, and we hope it helps you lead in the everyday spaces and moments of life.
Yeah, and like we say every week, we would love to have you continue to join us on this journey of the 4 Everyday Leaders podcast by Wayfinders. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube. And while you're there, leave a comment, leave a review. That lets other people find this great leadership content and the conversations that we get to have. Dustin, thanks so much, dude. This was awesome. Really appreciate you.
thank you. Ton of fun.